You know that moment, when you're sitting at your childhood dinner table, and you slide a piece of paper across the wood, and watch your father's face, just, crumble? Yeah. That was 3 months ago. The paper? An invoice. For $5,000. With interest. My dad, he thought he was so clever. Making that bet with me. In front of the entire family. Thanksgiving dinner, 2024. Turkey getting cold on everyone's plates, while he stood up, pointed his finger at me, and said those words that still echo in my head. Sarah will never amount to anything. I'll bet $5,000, she won't even pass her CPA exam. The silence in that room, it was deafening. My mom staring at her mashed potatoes. My brother looking uncomfortable. My sister, she actually laughed. But me? I just smiled. And I said, deal. He had no idea what he'd just done. See, my father, he'd been betting against me my entire life. Every report card, every job interview, every relationship, he was always there, waiting for me to fail. Predicting it. Almost, hoping for it. But this time was different. This time, he put his money where his mouth was. And I decided to collect. With interest. And a few extras that he definitely wasn't expecting. The look on his face when I passed that exam, when I got that certificate in the mail, when I calculated exactly how much he owed me, including the emotional damage clause I'd written into our little agreement. Let me tell you, revenge is a dish best served, with proper documentation. And a really good lawyer. Which, thanks to my new CPA certification, I could finally afford. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that $5,000 invoice felt so good to write, you need to know about the 23 years of bets he'd been making against me. And how I'd been keeping score, this entire time. Growing up in the Morrison household was like living in a courtroom, where the verdict was always, guilty. My father, David Morrison, he was a successful financial advisor. Big house, nice cars, country club membership, the whole package. And he never, ever, let us forget it. Especially me. See, I was the middle child. My older brother Jake, he was the golden boy. Football captain, business degree, married his college sweetheart, everything Dad wanted in a son. My younger sister Emma, she was the princess. Blonde, popular, married a doctor, everything Dad wanted in a daughter. And then there was me. Sarah. The disappointment. I remember being 12 years old, sitting at this same dinner table, showing my parents my report card. Straight A's. I was so proud. I thought, finally Dad would see that I was smart. That I mattered. He looked at the paper, for maybe 3 seconds, then set it down. And he said, well, it's a good thing you're book smart, Sarah, because you'll never make it in the real world. My mom, she just nodded. Like it was obvious. Like everyone knew. That's when he made his first bet. He turned to my mom and said, I bet you $50. Sarah won't make it through high school without getting pregnant. I was 12. 12 years old, and my own father was betting on me to fail. But it got worse. So much worse. When I was 16, I wanted to take AP classes. I was excited. I thought maybe I could get into a good college. Dad laughed. Actually laughed. He said, Sarah taking advanced classes? That's rich. Then he turned to Jake and said, I'll bet you $100, she drops out before Christmas. I didn't drop out. I got a 4.2 GPA. When I graduated high school and got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship. Dad's response? Community college would be more realistic for someone like you. He told my uncle, right in front of me, I'll bet you $500 she flunks out freshman year. I graduated with honors. Summa cum laude. Finance degree. But here's the thing about my family, they don't celebrate victories. They just move the goalposts. When I got my bachelor's degree, Dad said, well, anyone can get a degree these days. Let's see if you can actually get a job. When I got my first job at a small accounting firm, Dad said, that's not a real career. That's just busy work. Let's see if you can make it 5 years without getting fired. 5 years later, when I was still there, still climbing, Dad said, well, you're 30 now, Sarah. And unmarried. And childless. I guess we know what you chose to prioritize. Every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday, it was the same. Dad would find some new way to predict my failure. And my mom would nod. And my siblings would laugh. And I would sit there, taking notes. Literally. Taking notes. I started keeping a journal when I was 16. Every bet, every prediction, every cruel comment. I wrote it all down. Dates, witnesses, exact quotes, everything. Because even then, even as a kid, I knew someday I'd need proof. The CPA exam bet, that wasn't random. That was the culmination of 23 years of my father systematically betting against his own daughter. And this time he'd finally gone too far. Let me know in the comments where you are watching this video from. I'd love to know. Because what happened next, well, let's just say, my attention to detail finally paid off. Thanksgiving 2024. The day that changed everything. I'd been studying for my CPA exam for 8 months. 8 months of 14-hour days, weekends locked in my apartment, flashcards scattered across every surface. I was exhausted. Burned out. And honestly, I wasn't even sure I was ready. But I was going to take it anyway. Because I had to. The exam was scheduled for December 15th. 3 weeks away. And I was terrified. So when Mom called and invited me to Thanksgiving dinner, I almost said no. I had so much studying left to do. But she guilt-tripped me. Sarah, honey, it's been months since we've seen you. And your father, well, he misses you. That should have been my first red flag. Dad missing me? Dad had never missed anyone in his life. But I went. God help me. I went. The house looked exactly the same. Perfectly decorated, perfectly clean, perfectly cold. Jake was there with his wife and their 2 kids. Emma was there with her doctor husband, showing off her new diamond tennis bracelet. And there was Dad. Sitting at the head of the table, like a king holding court. Dinner started normal enough. Past the stuffing, how's work, cute story about the grandkids, you know, the usual family small talk. But I could feel it, building. Dad kept looking at me, with this smirk. Finally, during dessert, he struck. So, Sarah, he said, cutting into his pumpkin pie. How's that, studying, going? The way he said studying, like it was a joke. Like it was cute that I was even trying. It's going well, Dad, I said. Keeping my voice steady. The exam's in 3 weeks. He nodded. Took another bite. Then he said, you know, I looked up the pass rates for that exam. Did you know that only 55% of people pass on their first try? I'm aware, I said. He said. Like he was thinking. Like he was calculating something. Then he looked around the table, making sure everyone was listening. Those are pretty rough odds, don't you think? My brother Jake, he was already grinning. He knew what was coming. I mean, Dad continued, you've never been great at pressure situations. Remember when you choked during that high school math competition? Or when you had that panic attack before your college finals? My hand started shaking. Under the table, where no one could see. David. My mom said quietly. But she didn't really mean it. She never really meant it. No, Dad said, waving his hand. I'm just being realistic here. Sarah's always been an optimist. Sometimes unrealistically so. That's when Emma chimed in. Sweet, perfect Emma. Dad's got a point, Sarah. Maybe you should lower your expectations? There's no shame in failing if you tried your best. If you tried your best. Like I hadn't been killing myself for 8 months. But Dad wasn't done. He set down his fork. Looked directly at me. And said, you know what, Sarah? I'm so confident that you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I'll make you a bet. The room went quiet. Even the kids stopped talking. $5,000, he said. $5,000 says, you won't pass that exam. My mom gasped. Jake whistled. Emma covered her mouth with her hand. David, Mom said again. That's a lot of money. It's not about the money, Dad said. His eyes never leaving mine. It's about teaching Sarah a valuable lesson. About knowing your limits. About being realistic. I could have walked away. I should have walked away. But something in his voice, something in the way he was looking at me, like I was already defeated, like he'd already won. Fine, I said. Deal. Dad smiled. Actually smiled. Like Christmas had come early. But, I continued, I want it in writing. His smile faltered. Just a little. Excuse me? The bet, I said. Standing up. Walking to Mom's kitchen drawer, where she kept pens and paper. I want it in writing. Signed and dated. With witnesses. I came back with a piece of paper. Started writing. $5,000 bet. Pass rates. Exam date. Terms and conditions. And then I added something extra. Something Dad didn't see coming. What's this about interest? He asked, reading over my shoulder. Well, I said, handing him the pen, if I do pass, and you refuse to pay, there should be consequences. So, 5% interest, compounded monthly, until payment is received. Dad laughed. Sarah, you're not going to pass. So interest is irrelevant. He signed it. Right there. In front of everyone. Jake signed as a witness. Emma signed as a witness. Even Mom, reluctantly, signed as a witness. I folded that paper, put it in my purse, and smiled. See you in 3 weeks, Dad. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying the story, please subscribe. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Because what happened over those next 3 weeks, and what I discovered while I was studying, well, let's just say, that $5,000 was going to be the least of Dad's problems. December 15th. Exam day. I woke up at 5 a.m. Couldn't sleep anyway. My stomach was in knots, my hands were shaking, and I kept thinking about Dad's face. That smug, confident smile. The testing center was 40 minutes away. I got there early. Sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing. Just preparing myself. 4 hours later, I walked out. And I honestly had no idea if I'd passed or failed. The CPA exam, it's not like other tests. You don't get your results immediately. You have to wait. Sometimes for weeks. The not knowing, it's torture. But here's what I did know. I'd given it everything. Every brain cell, every ounce of energy, every piece of knowledge I'd crammed into my head over the past 8 months. 2 weeks later. December 29th. I got the email. I was sitting in my apartment, eating cereal for dinner, when my phone buzzed. Subject line, CPA examination results. My hands were shaking so bad. I almost couldn't open it. But I did. And there it was. One word. Pass. I passed. I actually passed. I screamed. Literally screamed. My neighbors probably thought I was being murdered. But I didn't care. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. But then the real satisfaction kicked in. Because I wasn't just a CPA now. I was a CPA who was about to collect on a $5,000 bet. With interest. I spent that night calculating exactly how much Dad owed me. Principal amount, $5,000. Interest, 5% per month, compounded, for approximately 6 weeks. Total amount due, $5,457.63. But that wasn't enough. See, during those 8 months of studying, I'd also been doing something else. Something Dad didn't know about. I'd been investigating. My CPA training, it taught me how to read financial documents. How to spot irregularities. How to trace money. And I'd been curious about Dad's business. About how he could afford that big house, those expensive cars, that country club membership. So I'd done some digging. Public records, business filings, tax liens, all perfectly legal information. Available to anyone who knows where to look. And what I found, well, let's just say, Dad hadn't been as honest as he pretended to be. January 3rd. Family dinner. Dad had insisted. To celebrate the new year, he said. But I knew why he really wanted me there. He wanted to gloat. He wanted to watch me admit that I'd failed. I showed up with a manila envelope. And a very specific plan. So, Sarah, Dad said, carving the roast beef. How'd that exam go? Get your results yet? The whole table went quiet. Waiting. I reached into my purse. Pulled out a piece of paper. My official CPA certificate. Set it on the table, right next to the mashed potatoes. Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I passed, I said. Simple. Matter of fact. The silence was deafening. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking from the next room. Mom was the first to speak. Oh my. That's wonderful, honey. But Dad was still staring at that certificate. Like it might disappear if he looked away. Well, he said finally. Congratulations. But his voice, it sounded hollow. Defeated. Thank you, I said. Then I reached for the manila envelope. Now, about that bet. I pulled out the contract. The one he'd signed. The one with all the witnesses. According to our agreement, I said, you owe me $5,000. Plus interest. I slid the invoice across the table. Itemized. Professional. Perfect. The total amount due, I said, is $5,457.63. Dad picked up the invoice. Read it twice. His face, it went from red to white to green. Sarah, he said quietly. This is ridiculous. It was just a bet. A joke. A joke? I said. Dad, you signed a contract. In front of witnesses. There's nothing funny about that. That's when Jake tried to jump in. Come on, Sarah. You can't be serious. It's family. Family, I repeated. Right. Family. I reached for the manila envelope again. Pulled out a second set of papers. Speaking of family, I said, I've been meaning to ask you something, Dad. About your business. His face went completely white. See, during my CPA studies, I learned how to read financial documents. And I got curious about Morrison Financial Services. So I did some research. I spread the papers across the table. Bank records. Tax filings. Business licenses. Did you know, I said, that your business license expired 3 years ago? And that you've been operating without proper registration? Mom gasped. Emma dropped her fork. And these bank deposits, I continued, pointing to the records. They're interesting. Payments from clients, going into your personal account. Instead of your business account. The IRS, they call that tax evasion. Dad stood up. So fast, his chair fell backward. You have no right. He started. I have every right, I said. Standing up too. I'm a CPA now. I have a professional obligation to report financial irregularities. Especially when they involve my own family. The room was spinning. Or maybe that was just Dad. So here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to pay me what you owe me. Every penny. And then, you're going to get your business affairs in order. Before I decide whether or not to make some phone calls. I gathered up my papers. Put them back in the envelope. You have 48 hours, I said. To transfer the money. Electronic payment preferred. And then, I walked out. Leaving my family, sitting there, in complete, stunned, silence. The next 48 hours were the longest of my entire life. I kept checking my phone. Every 5 minutes. Waiting for something. A text, a call, a bank notification, anything. But there was nothing. Just silence. Hour 36, my phone finally rang. Mom. Sarah, honey. She said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. You need to come home. Your father, he's not well. Not well. Classic mom. Always making excuses for Dad's behavior. Is he in the hospital? I asked. No, but he's been in his office for 2 days straight. He won't eat, he won't sleep, he just keeps staring at those papers you showed us. Good, I thought. Let him stare. Sarah, Mom continued, this has gone too far. It was just a bet. Can't you just let it go? Let it go. 23 years, of betting against me. Of telling me I'd never amount to anything. Of making me feel worthless. And she wanted me to let it go. No, Mom, I said. I can't. I hung up. Hour 47, my bank app sent me a notification. Wire transfer received. $5,457.63. But that wasn't all. There was also a memo. It said, payment in full. Please don't destroy our family. Our family. Like we'd ever really been a family. But Dad wasn't done. Because 20 minutes later, I got a text. From him. You win, Sarah. Are you happy now? I stared at that message for a long time. Was I happy? I'd gotten my money. I'd proven my point. I'd shown him that I wasn't the failure he thought I was. But happy? I wasn't sure. I knew what that felt like anymore. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I did something else. Something that, probably, crossed the line. I made those phone calls. First call, to the IRS. Anonymous tip line. About a financial advisor, operating without proper licensing. With documentation. Second call, to the state licensing board. Same story. Same documentation. Third call, to 3 of Dad's biggest clients. People I'd found, through public records. People who had a right to know that their financial advisor wasn't properly registered. Within a week, Morrison Financial Services was under investigation. Within 2 weeks, Dad had lost 6 clients. Within a month, his business was effectively destroyed. The texts started coming around week 3. Not from Dad. From Jake. Sarah, what did you do? Dad's business is falling apart. Then Emma, I can't believe you would destroy your own father. Over money. Then Mom, your father had to close his office. He's talking about bankruptcy. Are you satisfied? But the text that really got to me came from Dad himself. Week 4. I know what you did. The phone calls. The tips. The sabotage. I taught you to be smart, Sarah. But I didn't teach you to be cruel. I read that text, probably 50 times. Cruel. He was calling me cruel. This, from the man who spent 23 years systematically destroying my self-esteem. Who bet against his own daughter at every opportunity. Who made me feel like I was worthless. But here's the thing. As the weeks went by, and I watched Dad's world crumble, I started to realize something. The money, it wasn't enough. The revenge, it wasn't enough. Because no matter how much I hurt him, it wouldn't change the past. It wouldn't give me back those 23 years. It wouldn't make me feel whole. 6 weeks after the dinner, I got a call from Jake. Dad was in the hospital. Stress-induced chest pains. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough. He's asking for you, Jake said. I almost said no. Almost hung up. But something made me go. Dad looked old. Smaller somehow. Lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, he didn't look like the powerful man who'd terrorized my childhood. He looked broken. Sarah, he said when he saw me. his voice, barely a whisper. Dad. We stared at each other, for what felt like hours. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry, he said. For the bet. For everything. I was wrong about you. 23 years, and that was it. 3 sentences. Like that could erase decades of damage. I know you'll probably never forgive me, he continued. And I understand why. But I want you to know. I'm proud of you. For passing that exam. For standing up to me. For becoming the woman you are, despite everything I put you through. I wanted to feel vindicated. I wanted to feel satisfied. But all I felt was tired. Exhausted. Empty. Dad, I said finally. I need you to understand something. This wasn't about the money. This was never about the money. He nodded. Like he knew. This was about 23 years of you betting against your own daughter. Of you telling me I'd never be good enough. Of you making me believe I was worthless. Tears were running down his face now. Silent tears. And the worst part, I continued, is that I actually started to believe you. I spent my entire adult life trying to prove you wrong. Instead of just living my life. I stood up to leave. But then I turned back. The business investigation, that was me. Just so you know. I made those calls. I provided that documentation. He closed his eyes. Nodded. I figured, he said. Good, I said. Because I want you to know that every single consequence, every client you lost, every dollar you had to pay, that was the price of betting against me. I walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back one last time. Oh, and Dad? The next time you want to make a bet about someone's potential, maybe choose someone who isn't keeping score. That was 3 months ago. I haven't spoken to him since. 3 months later, here I am. Sarah Morrison, CPA. Sitting in my new office, in my new job, making more money than I ever thought possible. The revenge? It felt good, for about a week. But then, the satisfaction wore off. And what was left wasn't victory. It was just emptiness. See, I'd spent so much time proving Dad wrong that I'd forgotten how to prove myself right. I'd been so focused on his opinion of me that I'd never really formed my own opinion of myself. The CPA certification, it changed everything. Not just my career, but my perspective. For the first time in my life, I had something that was mine. Something Dad couldn't take away, couldn't diminish, couldn't bet against. And that's when I realized, the real tragedy wasn't that Dad bet against me. The real tragedy was that I'd been betting against myself this entire time. Do I regret what I did? The phone calls, the investigation, destroying his business? Some days, yes. Some days I think, maybe I went too far. Maybe I became the very thing I hated about him. But other days, I remember that 12-year-old girl. With her straight A's, and her broken heart. And I think, maybe she needed someone to fight for her. Even if it was 23 years too late. My family, we don't really talk anymore. Jake sends obligatory birthday texts. Emma pretends I don't exist. Mom, she calls sometimes. Updates about Dad's health, his job search, his struggle to rebuild. But I'm okay with that. Because I finally learned the most important lesson of all. Your family's opinion of you doesn't have to become your opinion of yourself. These days, I make my own bets. I bet on my intelligence. I bet on my resilience. I bet on my ability to create a life that's worthy of the woman I've become. And so far, I'm winning. The $5,000? I donated it to a scholarship fund for young women pursuing careers in finance. Because sometimes, the best revenge is making sure the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles you did. Dad's business, it never recovered. He works for someone else now. Makes a fraction of what he used to make. Lives in a smaller house, drives an older car, belongs to a cheaper country club. Some people might say, I destroyed him. And maybe I did. But here's what I know. For 23 years, he systematically destroyed my self-worth, my confidence, my belief in my own potential. So maybe, just maybe, we're even now. The difference is, I built myself back up. I took that broken 12-year-old, and I turned her into someone strong. Someone successful. Someone who refuses to accept anyone's limitations ever again. And that's worth more than any bet anyone could ever make. If you liked this story, check out this other one on the screen. About a daughter who discovered her mother's biggest secret and used it to change her entire life. See you there.